Princess Charlotte's words do not cause the room to erupt. It falls eerily silent. What starts out as a typical private family get-together abruptly becomes something that no one in Windsor is equipped to handle. When the young princess declines to accept Camilla as her grandmother, Charles hears it. William knows what it means right away. As Catherine observes her daughter's expression, she recognizes this is not a sign of immaturity. Camilla is aware that Charlotte has taken a conscious decision. Prior to delving further into what, this basically indicates that if you want to be up to date with the royal family, you need to subscribe. Charles had anticipated the Windsor luncheon to go off without a hitch. Knowing that there had been recent family strife, William and Catherine had come with Charlotte, George, and Louis. Made even a private dinner delicate, and Camilla had purposefully kept the discussion light. Castle Windsor was significant since private meetings there lacked the official protection of a public event. This was family domain, making it difficult for rank to conceal feelings. Everyone played their part for a few minutes. The Queen Consort then remarked nonchalantly that she was a member of the children's grandparent generation, implying that the elder family members have a role like that of grandparents. Charlotte raised her head and responded with striking composure. She already knew who her grandmothers were, she stated, refusing to give Camilla a call. Grandmother. Camilla's hand stopped over the teacup as she attempted to smile. She had endured animosity from adults, years of comparison and public criticism. However, this rejection was received differently because it originated from a child who would stay near the future of the kingdom and the king's granddaughter. William became enraged, but not with Charlotte in mind. Rather than correcting his daughter, he kept a close eye on her. Catherine put one hand next to the girls on the table, a tiny gesture that conveyed to everyone that she knew there was more to the words. George fell silent. Louis glanced between the adults. No one tried to bring the topic back to life. At last, Charles inquired as to Charlotte's motivation. His voice remained low, but the query carried the monarch's and grandfather's authority. As a sovereign, the king means the official head of the monarchy would have anticipated an embarrassed apology. Rather, Charlotte responded that you had to earn some family names based on how people made you feel. Camilla turned to face William right away. There were no words needed to make the charge. Has this been promoted by the prince? Before she could inquire, he responded. Catherine discreetly affirmed that he had never told his daughter to reject her. Then Charlotte asked if she might go. Catherine gave a nod. The scrape on the floor seemed to be louder than any words spoken that afternoon as the little princess pushed her chair back. Charles glanced at William, instantly realizing that no palace order could explain, while Camilla stayed motionless, what had just taken place. Following her daughter into the hallway, Catherine eventually acknowledged that this was not the first time Camilla had made. She feels uneasy. One private encounter had altered everything a few weeks prior. One awkward statement would be enough to keep the palace afloat. However, what Charlotte said to Catherine behind that closed door changed the comment from a family shame to the result of something that had been construction for several months. For Charlotte, a title isn't the main point of contention. That's precisely why it hurts for Camilla. Catherine is torn between defending a daughter who feels establishing and maintaining harmony around a monarch already weighed down by family strife. William must make an even more difficult calculation. He has the authority to command royal protocol. He has authority over domestic arrangements. However, making his kid produce, silence may be far less expensive than affection for someone she does not truly embrace. Catherine is seated next to. Charlotte does not start with discipline after the luncheon. What grandmother means to her, she asks, and the response arrives slowly. Stories, safety, trust, and someone who protects you instead of putting pressure on you. Charlotte was raised surrounded by royal titles, such as queen and heir, which influence both public and private obligation. The individual who is anticipated to take the throne is known as an heir. However, family language is important to a youngster. Catherine is aware of this disparity and won't use her daughter's emotions as a stage. Camilla senses the injury from a different room. She tells Charles that while she can put up with negative headlines and comparisons, she can't act as though his granddaughter's rejection doesn't matter. The king stops while attempting to reassure her, before claiming that Charlotte will change her mind. That hesitancy goes farther than it was meant to. Camilla has been looking for acceptance within his family, and the younger generation symbolizes something that private ceremonies cannot ensure to feeling at home. She questions whether belonging can be genuine if it needs to be asked for, as Charles reaches for her hand. Later, William runs into Catherine and poses the question that they have both shied away from. Was Diana mentioned by Charlotte? Catherine affirms that their daughter has developed an interest in the grandmother she never met, particularly after viewing pictures and hearing recollections from her dad. Then she adds something much more alarming. Camilla is not being rejected by Charlotte because Diana has turned into idealized. In a private discussion following the meal, the girl recounted a conversation from weeks prior in which she thought Camilla disregarded something that was significant to her on an emotional level. Before going inside Charlotte's bedroom, William pauses outside. He reaches for the door handle, then tumbles out. The future monarch recognizes that the problem of royal concord has been resolved. His daughter has been taken away. He must choose whether to speak as a father or as a prince defending order in an adult past she never made. Safeguarding confidence, Charlotte informs him that everything changed during a palace ceremony as soon as he walks in. When Camilla scolded her over Diana in front of someone she trusted to comprehend why Charlotte was unable to express a single word. When the young princess had a correction, the family had to go back to that afternoon, a line that cannot be forgiven crossed. A few weeks before to the Windsor luncheon, there had been no disagreement, no spectacular departure, and no family hierarchy. All that was present was a silent chamber, a picture of Diana, and a single statement Charlotte took with her. The exchange was almost instantly forgotten by adults. Charlotte didn't. The young princess felt differently about what Camilla thought was a trivial correction, because it affected the one connection she could knew only through stories, and all of a sudden, those stories seemed like they needed to be defended. Charlotte had invested. William and I spent several evenings discussing old family photos and their subjects. Catherine, she wanted Charlotte, George, and Louis to comprehend their family history. Therefore, she supported their discussions, prior to their understanding of it as a monarchy. At Windsor, a private family legacy presentation was only a casual get-together, where private items and photos from past generations were discussed outside of public ceremonies. William continued to. Diana has a straightforward and intimate memory. He spoke of her warmth, referred to her as their grandmother, and never used the past as a tool against all living people. Charlotte stopped next to one picture and beckoned her in a low voice. Diana, grandmother. Camilla heard the comments when she walked in during the conversation. After pausing, she informed the young princess. Now that she has family nearby, she shouldn't get overly connected to strangers. The phrase wasserin. It had no effect. Glancing down, Charlotte shut the little book she had been perusing and asked William if they could carry on another day. He could tell right away that something had changed. The prince later informed Camilla that although his baby was too young to grasp tone, she was old enough to bear the burden of decades of suffering inside the family. The queen consort maintained that all she had intended was for Charlotte to be rooted in the present. Eventually, Catherine discovered that there had been another time that no one was aware of. Charlotte had silently returned to the room after leaving, because she had left her jewelry behind. She heard Camilla warning an assistant before she fully entered that the kids would get confused if Diana was mentioned frequently. Charlotte heard enough from the assistant, even if she didn't say anything. The meaning seemed painfully obvious to her. Recalling her, Charlotte kept her grief to herself for weeks, while her grandma started to become an issue that others needed resolved. She never told William what she had heard, never confronted Camilla, and never asked for an explanation. Rather, she came to a personal decision. She would totally reject the new name if recognizing one grandma meant diminishing the status of another. When his daughter eventually related the story of the forgotten bracelet, William listened. He put the family portrait face down on the desk and lowered his gaze. The meal at Windsor had not been rash disobedience. It was the conclusion of a choice Charlotte had been keeping to herself. By nightfall, it was no longer a question of whether Charlotte had acted badly. William was curious as to why a young person had been put in a situation where they had to defend a deceased. Grandma felt required, and Camilla was going to be directly asked that question. William doesn't call advisors. He doesn't ask for an official gathering of the family. After asking Camilla to talk in private, he waits for the door to lock and informs her that there won't be any conversation about Charlotte's manners up until they talk about what actually transpired. Camilla shows up anticipating pressure to fix the lunch. Rather, She discovers a father who feels his daughter has been burdened emotionally by grown-ups, and he declines to allow it to be buried by the royal hierarchy. William purposefully keeps Charles out of the room. The presence of the monarch would make the conversation about royal precedence and rank, the official hierarchy that determines who is superior to whom. The prince's goal is to stay away from the institution. Who is superior to Charlotte is not the issue here. It is regarding who is entitled to determine her personal emotions. Camilla anticipates that he will seek an apology for the humiliation at Windsor. Rather, he describes the picture, the misplaced bracelet, and his daughter's second comment heard. William does not sit. Instead, he rests both palms on the back of a chair. He poses the question Camilla has been dreading, and she stays seated. Did you let her know that it was difficult to recall her grandmother? The Queen cautiously responds that Charlotte was not supposed to hear the remark. His face becomes stern. Gold does not eliminate impact, he claims. Until he explains what the words produced, his voice stays under control. Charlotte now feels that it would be a betrayal to Diana to emotionally accept Camilla. At last, Camilla loses her composure. She informs William that she has endured years of discrimination as a woman who passed away long before the modern family structure began to take shape. She acknowledges that every remembrance of Diana can leave her feeling as though there is no emotional room left for anybody else. She claims that her negative reaction was caused by her concern that Charlotte's developing attachment to those stories would inevitably become yet another comparison in which she was unsuccessful. The prince pays attention, but he doesn't back down. He claims that Camilla was never asked to compete by her daughter. The line is then drawn by William. No one has prohibited Charlotte from taking care of her, and no one will incite animosity, but no one will order the girl to use a family phrase. She doesn't mean it. Camilla inquires as to whether that is a new household rule or just his opinion. His response is met with harsh simplicity. Catherine and I make the decision for my kids. Camilla stops talking. The rage gives way to humiliation since she is aware of what that boundary entails. Even though Charles is king, making his granddaughter, royal authority would appear harsh rather than powerful if devotion were manufactured. He learns exactly what William said within an hour and requests a private meeting with his son. Camilla anticipated the king's power to re-establish law and order, but now Charles had to make a decision that no crown could make simple: defend his spouse's honor or acknowledge his son's entitlement to defend his daughter. Charles has lived his entire life within a system based on titles, obligations, and precedents. However, none of them can solve the dilemma in front of him. He's able to inform Charlotte where to take a stand. He has the power to decide which ceremonies she goes to. He is able to determine how household members hour the Queen in a formal manner. He cannot command his granddaughter to feel a connection without repercussions. She is emotionless. William is also aware that Charles joins him in the room by himself, without assistants or private secretaries, because he doesn't want any evidence of hesitancy on what has grown to be a very personal choice. The conflict is described by the king as a threat to family harmony rather than a challenge to Camilla's position. The royal public behavior can be regulated by protocol, which is the set of official rules controlling conduct, titles, and ceremonies. However, William makes it plain that Charlotte will abide by those guidelines as needed. She'll be considerate. She'll act appropriately, however. The term grandmother refers to personal devotion, not a constitutional obligation. Charles acknowledges that Camilla has been more severely hurt by the rejection than she has stated in public or in private. William responds right away, but he does not downplay that suffering. The first person hurt was Charlotte. His daughter lacked the maturity to comprehend decades of royal strife and had no power when an adult made her feel that it was somehow dishonorable to think of Diana. Correcting Charlotte now would teach the incorrect message, according to the prince, that everyone else's strength is determined by the strongest person in the room. Feelings. Charles senses the conflict becoming more intense. He is devoted to his wife and is aware of the length of time she has struggled to feel safe in the family. He is aware, though, that his granddaughter will recall what transpires next. The king queries whether Catherine really backs William's stance. Yes, he responds. They have agreed that Charlotte will make use of Camilla's official royal type of address when required by protocol. However, she will never be forced to call her grandmother in private. George and Louis will have the same latitude to allow those connections to grow organically. Charles takes off his spectacles and places them next to a closed folder, Father and son are silent for a long time. At last, he declares that he will not force Charlotte. The choice is silent, but it has immense significance. He is still in charge of the royal structure. However, William and Catherine continue to be in charge, control the emotional development of their kids. Without jeopardizing the very family ties he is attempting to uphold, even a sovereign cannot demand faith.fend. Charles thinks the issue can still be discussed behind closed doors at Windsor. That idea does not endure. Lengthy. When Camilla finds out he won't overrule William, she starts acting differently, and staff members start observing that she was missing events that she would typically attend. Although the king had decided against pressuring Charlotte to love him, the choice did not establish harmony. It caused distance, and Camilla's response would almost instantly reveal that distance. There is no statement in the first consequence. The chair is vacant. Camilla stealthily leaves a private family tea where Charlotte is supposed to attend, informing Charles that she doesn't see the need to create another awkward situation. What appears to be, within the family, restriction seems much more serious. Catherine fears Charlotte will place the blame on herself. William believes the withdrawal is a type of coercion. As Charles observes his spouse distance herself from others she had spent years attempting to participate, Camilla continues to fulfill all formal obligations, but private invitations take a different turn. Palace employees take attention that the Queen Consort starts to hesitate if Charlotte is there, but Charles continues to welcome family get-togethers. These meetings are discretionary family events rather than formal commitments. Thus attendance is private, not obligated by royal obligation. Every absence now feels intentional, which makes the difference significant. Camilla assures herself that she is avoiding another conflict. However, the pattern produces the precise thing she wanted to avoid: a noticeable rift within the family. Catherine soon recognizes the threat. When Charlotte sees that the tea room is vacant, she inquires as to whether Camilla's absence was due to me. Her mother gives a stern response that adults are accountable for their own decisions and emotions. Because she was honest, Charlotte doesn't need to make amends with everyone around her. The girl appears relieved. However, the relief is fleeting. She inquires as to whether the Queen is upset. According to Catherine, hurt and rage are not the same thing, and Charlotte becomes quieter as a result of that response. Later, Camilla sits by herself and informs Charles that she feels like a person who has to check if his grandchildren are comfortable before going into a room. The monarch pays attention, but this time he does more than just justify her suffering. He informs his spouse that avoiding her will not earn Charlotte's trust. Camilla may be shielded from another traumatic event by withdrawal, but it also places emotional return the child's weight. Charles believes the repair must start for the first time, without anticipating the word grandmother. William learns that Camilla is thinking of missing an impending private birthday, as evidence that it was successful. Meeting as well. His worry instantly becomes more intense. If Charlotte moves into a different room with each absence, then a daughter can start to think she has control over the appearance or disappearance of grown-ups. What he tells Catherine is exactly the load they wish to avoid. She concurs, but she also observes something surprising in Charlotte. Camilla's departure has not delighted the girl. After the tea is over, Camilla briefly reappears and stops next to the unaltered location that was ready for her. She never sits, although she does put one hand on the chair. Suddenly, the seat was empty. Feels more like surrender than protection. Not a person, but a term had been rejected by Charlotte. And after William, recognizing this difference, he promoted a single private discussion that would alter the course of the entire conflict. There isn't a king between them. Neither side is represented by any future king. Catherine is waiting somewhere else. For the first time since the crisis started, Charles is purposefully missing. Without the apparatus of royalty encircling their talk, Charlotte and Camilla face each other. The young princess is still unconvinced about the initial word. Camilla is aware that the changes are more challenging. At last, both clarify what they thought the other had stolen from them. Only until Charlotte expresses her desire for the meeting does Catherine assist in setting it up. William accepts one requirement: no one will push a new name or demand an apology during the conversation. Before Camilla comes in, Charles says the same thing. He asserts that reconciliation must start unconditionally. That is significant because a family name conveys personal sentiment, whereas a royal title is a formal style employed in public service. For once, they are keeping the worlds separate. Charlotte provides the identical picture of Diana that was the focal point of the previous shirt. She tells Camilla that she believes the Queen wanted her to cease caring for someone after setting it on the table significant to her dad. Despite their simplicity, the words have a strong impact. Camilla doesn't interject. She acknowledges the picture touched a child with an insecurity she should never have imposed. When she hears Diana's disgust, she remarks, "Can make her feel." Charlotte responds calmly, as if she will always be compared with a memory she can never compete against. She claims that Camilla was never asked to compete. She is disarmed by the phrase, "The Queen has carried an adult for many years." The tiny princess had simply been inquiring about her own family, but she was terrified whenever Diana was mentioned. Camilla recognizes at last how much history was forced upon a child who never requested to inherit it. Camilla then expresses regret directly. She claims that her suggestion that Charlotte would grow overly connected to a stranger was incorrect, and incorrect once more to characterize their recollections as perplexing. She doesn't request the term grandmother. That omission is important. Charlotte says she still wants to call Camilla privately when it's appropriate, even though she accepts the apology, and at official times use her correct title. The Queen concurs. When Charlotte gets to the door, she stops. She pivots, returns, and inquires as to whether Camilla will attend the forthcoming family birthday celebration. The invitation is personal for the first time instead of ceremonial. Despite being taken aback, Camilla agrees. At last, they had located a secluded piece. However, the public was unaware of the discussion. And a few days later, when Charlotte and Camilla showed up together, everyone wanted to understand a single gesture. Charlotte's private talk is not heard by the general public alongside Camilla. It perceives something smaller and in many respects more potent. Cameras outside Windsor record a young princess leaving a family event, stopping next to the Queen, and extending her hand instead of the customary hug that onlookers anticipated. The image takes over front pages and airwaves in a matter of hours. It appears to outsiders to be rejection. However, the gesture has nearly the opposite meaning within the family. William is aware that before the family even gets there, every action will be scrutinized. Catherine is also aware of it. Photographers are looking for an indication that there is tension. A planned public appearance made on behalf of the monarchy is known as a royal engagement. However, there is another burden associated with this collecting. Watching is no longer just done out of obligation. Charlotte is being observed by them. Her parents don't pretend to show love. They just offer her one instruction: be yourself and show respect. As soon as the pictures start to circulate, Camilla feels the pressure. Charlotte's picture appears on one top page. The scene is repeatedly shown on television panels as she extends her hand beneath the words, "the royal distance," interpreting the absence of the embrace as proof that the family breakup has gotten worse. A crowd watches the royal cars drive out from Windsor Castle. The young princess is praised by others for standing her ground. Some contend that no youngster should be the focus of an adult dispute. One private boundary has turned into a national dispute in a matter of hours. When Camilla sees the headline, she feels ashamed. Charlotte had been courteous. It wasn't a penalty to shake hands. They had agreed that there could be a cautious middle ground. However, public perception transforms such advancement into what appears to be rejection. Charles thinks right away about whether the palace ought to explain what transpired. William raises an objection. He contends that any explanation of Charlotte's emotions would expose his daughter to further scrutiny and compel her personal feelings to be discussed in public. They are both taken aback by Camilla. She concurs with William. Even though silence allows the newspapers to misrepresent them, the Queen informs Charles that Charlotte should not be used to restore her reputation. Something significant is altered by that decision. Camilla defends the limit rather than challenges it for the first time. Later, when Charlotte notices the newspaper next to William, she inquires as to if she humiliated Camilla once more. Her dad responds that being courteous and honest does not equate to cruelty. He asserts that adults should cease requiring youngsters to express their emotions, just because cameras are observing. It was described as rejection in the headlines. The palace was afraid of being divided. However, the decision would be made in secret within the family. There were no cameras waiting outside when Charlotte and Camilla reunited. Ultimately, Charlotte never retracts the remark that startled Windsor. She takes on a more significant task. She demonstrates that declining a title need not equate to declining a relationship. After weeks of hurt and defensiveness, Camilla comes to terms with something just as challenging. It is impossible to develop a sense of belonging by royal status, and love wanes under pressure. In the end, what started out as an apparent insult forces 3 generations of the monarchy to face the distinction between true family trust and ceremonial allegiance. Charlotte shows up next to William and Catherine during the last family get-together without any particular instructions. This time, the Queen does not hesitate at the entrance or ask if she should stay when Charles and Camilla arrive. There are no advisors in charge of seating. Nobody plans a meticulous reunion. When they start talking privately, Charlotte refers to Camilla by name, of course. She then employs the appropriate royal title, which is the official term mandated by position and duty. When the situation becomes formal, even though the difference is slight, it demonstrates something significant. It is not necessary to appear to be intimate in order to show respect. Camilla gives up waiting for the word that started the whole argument. Rather, she inquires about something the young princess brought up during their private discussion, and she is taken aback by the question. Charlotte becomes aware that she has been recalled. Crucially, she feels heard rather than controlled. Charles ultimately calms down after realizing the shift. Not because resentment no longer rules the room, his wife has achieved the title he once imagined she would. William also notices it. The future king appears unprepared to protect his daughter for the first time in weeks. From the subsequent emotional setback, Catherine is aware of what the adults had overlooked from the start. Charlotte's rejection made the family face Diana's memory without viewing it as a danger. By remembering, the younger generation was never causing the problem. The elder generation was afraid of what those recollections might signify. At last, Camilla acknowledges that she does not need to take Diana's place in order to develop a genuine relationship with Charlotte. The young princess discovers that defending her unfamiliar grandmother does not need to punish the woman in front of her. As the event comes to a finish, Charlotte stops next to Camilla and asks whether she plans to attend another family event next week. No title is requested, no embrace is coerced, and no big announcement. The Queen only expresses how much she would want that. And that turned into the enduring significance of Charlotte's rejection. Camilla was never referred to as her grandmother by her, but at the end, she was able to defend herself without rejection, the individuals she cherished. The family ultimately stopped squabbling over words and started developing a bond that may endure without it. I appreciate your reading. Remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the future.